Fitness Pro Mentor community, welcome to another episode of the Fitness Pro Mentors podcast. I'm extremely excited because someone that I equally respect, like, and enjoy talking to, which is a rare trio. Mr. Kevin Dunn is here joining us from Inertia Fitness. Kevin, how you doing today, sir?
I'm good, Brandon. How are you doing, brother?
I'm good, man. Very good. Not as good as you, though. I mean, you got the nice warm weather in Oklahoma. We got the freezing cold fall setting in over here. It sucks.
Yeah, we went from 113 as a high this summer down to where it's actually now just in the 90s. So we're ready for colder weather, man. It's been hot here all summer long.
Tough life. I'm wearing pants right now, so that should tell you how cold it is here.
Thank you for wearing pants.
Hey, dude. So what I want to do today with you is you opened an incredible gym in Inertia, and I know in Oklahoma called Inertia Fitness. And I know you've got really kind of an interesting, unique model going on there. So if you're okay with it today, I'd love to ask you some questions about how the heck you went into this whole enterprise and where you are today. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, sure thing, brother. Fire away.
Cool, man. So when I first met you, you were working out of another gym and you were renting space somewhere else. And then you went on to actually open up this really beautiful commercial looking facility. It's clean, it's sharp. Why did you decide to open up your own space?
It's kind of a natural evolution of things. I mean, I think as business owners, we all start out, just trying to survive, and then you get into a niche, and you start to grow a bit, and things start to get busy. You start to get a little notoriety, and then you're forced with the decision of, do I carry on, just myself doing this alone, which has its ups and downs, and then there's the other aspect of, do I decide to try and make this something bigger than myself and try and grow? And we just, I personally, my practice got to a point where I just outgrew my surroundings. I had so many people that wanted to come see me that I couldn't service them myself, which is a great problem to have. And then there were things I wanted to be able to do for people, things I wanted to be able to provide. There were physical limitations to the facility that I worked out of as well. So, there was a natural evolution there. The facility that I used to work out of was Tom Purvis's facility in Oklahoma City, and the first thing I did was, and that was there was a synergy there because I was teaching with Tom at the time, and so it was easy to work with my clients and just pop into a classroom, or it was a great environment to be there and have access to information. And then sort of the baby step was taking over a big chunk of space in a building that was right next to Tom's facility. And then I had 2 or 3 guys that came in to work with me, and they're still with me today, which is cool and odd. I mean, the original 2 guys that were actually clients and friends of mine early in my career are still training people out of my facility today. And gosh, man, it's been 14 years. So the first 2 guys have been with me for 14 years. And then we picked up another guy from a local gym pretty soon after we moved into our last space. So he's been around for 9 years now. I mean, it's crazy how fast time flies, but there, we had a great relationship amongst us, and we created a win-win situation, and we just continued to need a little bit more space and be able to service a few more people. And we've picked up a couple more contractors. There's 7 people that utilize the facility now. In total, we've had as many as 9. And that's an adventure. When you're about to crack double digits in terms of body count, that for some reason that just gets, it's a lot of work. That's a lot of cats to herd in a direction. But in any capacity, I've been really blessed that I've had people that have stuck with me for a long time and were interested in the service that I provide, and I was able to spread that out amongst 6 other individuals. And yeah, so that's where we are. Where we are.
That's incredible, man. Now, there's one thing I got to ask, because you were renting space at a Tom Purvis's place, which I know for anyone that's listening to this that's not familiar, Tom Purvis is the founder of the Resistance Training Specialist Program. And you said one thing that, as a natural evolution, there were some tools you didn't have access to that you needed that would help you service your clients more. Now, anyone that's listening to this might think, well, Tom Purvis might have all the tools, right? Because he's kind of like the tools mechanics guy. And I'm just wondering, what kind of tools were you missing out at Focus that you needed and wanted that helped you scale your business?
Well, the first thing is square footage. I mean, the first thing is just physical space. I mean, Tom is probably the master of, we used to talk about it as gym Tetris, right? Like he's and his newest facility is even more stuff and even less space. And, Tom's got a lot of things in his facility that are there for the sole purpose of education. I mean, he's got pieces of equipment that he himself would probably never use and probably never think about putting a client on. But he needs to have those pieces of equipment taking up space in the facility so that it's an aid to his classes. And that's a really interesting point to drill into because when you're working out of a space that is designed for a more encompassing purpose, like teaching classes and being the headquarters for RTS, and then having some trainers that utilize that facility for their business at the same time. Anytime you try and split purpose in a facility, you can't simultaneously excel at everything. So we needed square footage and we needed to sort of prioritize the pieces of equipment that were occupying space in that facility. And some crazy ab machine that Nautilus made in 1984. That's a great thing to just to make an educational point. That nobody's ever going to use. So there's certain things that just kind of get in the way after a while, and he may have a small stroke hearing me say that, but at the same time, you know we are very customer service oriented. People come in with goals, and our job is to try and help those people meet their goals. And there's different philosophies and different ways of going about providing a service, but we tend to cater to what people want to do, and sometimes that means guiding them through better versions of stuff that they see out there in the world that might at first not be ideal, but provide gateways for communication and relationship building that you can then steer people towards stuff that might be a little bit better ways. So uh, unlike guys that I've worked with before, I'm not unwilling to have people do box step ups and hell, if somebody wants a better way to do a burpee, I kind of take it upon myself to try and exhaust myself trying to figure out a way for them to do that well. Sometimes it just doesn't work. In fact, oftentimes it just doesn't work. But when you're trying to get people to buy into your special sauce, you got to meet them where they are. And having a facility that's more tailored to customer service as opposed to teaching trainers how to train people was a big part of that initial maneuver.
Well, of all people, I think you definitely have some special sauce. I mean, thinking of definitely, I had a bad joke I was going to bring out there, but I had to stop myself. But thinking of like the Masters of Spinal Rehabilitation, which is really incredible for you. I'm just wondering, leading into this, how did you actually go about opening your first gym? Was it just a matter of signing a lease and moving over, or did you have some pre-work you had to do to actually make it happen from going from being a contractor to Tom's Space to taking over the space?
Well, that first step was really easy. So, I mean, obviously he and I had a great relationship, and it was just a matter of me saying, "Hey, man, you get that vacant space over there. What do you think about me just jumping over there and taking it over?" And he was like, "Well, I think that'd be fantastic." And so, and then Tom was always a very generous landlord. We redid the space together. We did a lot of the work together with our own two hands. He did the vast majority of it, but I'm neurotic as hell when it comes to things like fit and finish. Picking door hinges and door handles and painting doors. I mean, I don't know how much you were in that original facility, but every door was a slab door, and I mean, I painted those things with acrylic paint to where they were a absolute, baby butt smooth finish, and that kind of stuff back in the day was fun when I had time to do that. But so then that first move, from being in Tom's gym to being in my own space down the sidewalk was really easy. And I'm a physical therapist by trade, which it sort of adds a nuance to what I'm trying to do with people. I had to have access to treatment table space. And for myself, my guys, we were all involved in MAT doing table work at one point in time, and then decided as a business that we needed to go a different way for a variety of different reasons. But that initial space was really easy because it was just a matter of, just sliding down the sidewalk and sort of, doing my own thing. And then very quickly, I had a couple guys that wanted to learn from me and wanted to be able to build a clientele and a practice that was similar to mine. The tricky place is when you take on a bigger, more expensive facility and you're trying to balance, okay, how much space do I need to pay for today versus how much growth am I going to accumulate, to pay the bills tomorrow. That requires some math and some foresight and some planning. And I'm happy to share how I looked at that particular problem, with you. It really we did a lot of due diligence. We did geographical survey of where all our clients were coming from. My business, especially in Oklahoma City, is very geographically centered. You get too far one way. Oklahoma City is a small city by population, but it's an extremely large city by surface area. So, if you go more than a few miles in one particular direction, you'll annex yourself from an entire market base of customers and clients. And I'm sure there's other places around the country and around the world, since we're doing this internationally. The There's other places where that happens too, but it's very unique in Oklahoma City. So our practice, we thought, drew very heavily from one very prominent, affluent area. And we really looked at it, we were like, oh, shit, 70% of our customers come from over 15 miles away. So, maybe geography isn't quite as important as we thought it would be. So we were able to move. I mean, we're still very close to the original facility, but we were able to move a little further north, So picking a location in terms of geography in that sense was pretty tricky. And the decision whether to purchase a building or to lease one was easy too, because we wanted to be able to stay flexible. When you're dealing with unknown quantities and how much you're going to be able to grow, taking on a lease as opposed to a purchase gives you the flexibility to either scale up or scale down. And we're getting ready to do a little mini expansion here after 6 years. That's going to allow us to grow a bit. And if we would have bought a building at the time that was the size that we needed 6 years ago, well, now we'd be looking at trying to sell that building and acquire another one, which is in today's real estate market with interest rates changing and everything else, it's a totally different calculus, right? So
Mm-hmm.
now we just knock out a wall and expand, a little bit to the north, and we've got all the space that we need. But you know, that's the juggling act. I tend to look at things in terms of what happens if we can change 20%. What if we can acquire 20% more staff? What happens if we can acquire 20% more revenue? And that tends to be a good metric for us. Oklahoma City's not, well, it's changing, but it's not what I would consider a dynamic fitness environment. Oklahoma ranks pretty low in terms of how heavy people are, and ranks pretty low in terms of how many people participate in exercise. If we were, 3 hours south of here in Dallas, Texas, that is a very dynamic fitness environment, right? You call yourself a personal trainer and put a pup tent in a parking lot, and you'll have 20 people there ready to buy sessions from you in half an hour. But so anyway, that's the metric. That's the transition from being in my buddy's space that was right next door to his gym, from moving up the street and taking on a bigger facility, and so on and so forth.
I mean, really incredible to hear that you guys are expanding. And I mean, your space already looks beautiful. With anyone that has not checked it out, check out, I think it's Inertia OKC, your website. Is that right?
Correct. InertiaOKC.com.
Definitely check it out because it's
Don't
beautiful.
judge us too harshly. Don't judge us too harshly based on the website, because that's about to get an overhaul as well.
Fair enough. Now, one of the questions I was going to ask you in the future, but it seems like a prudent time to ask. For you to move to the larger space, I have a lot of students ask, well, should I take a loan out? And I'm just wondering if you don't mind sharing, and if not, that's fine, but just did you take a loan out? And what is your general philosophy around that and business growth and trying to balance everything?
We were in a really great position, Brandon, that we did not have to borrow significant amounts of capital to operate, or to bring the facility to full fruition. We did have kind of a transient line of credit, funded privately. I'm blessed to know people that have always wanted to invest, in me. And so essentially what we did was, anytime that you're taking on a significant space of square footage, depending on how motivated the landlord is to lease that footage, a lot of times you can essentially finance the cost of a portion of your tenant improvements. The landlord will contribute capital to your build out, and then essentially you finance that or spread that out across, however many rent payments you're going to make for the term of a lease. And so we did a portion of that, and then we had a line of credit that allowed us to operate sort of into and out of it. You get some pretty big line item expenses whenever you're constructing a facility. You can't really time everything to pay for it out of existing revenue, but within a few months of us moving into the facility, that line of credit was paid off, and it's very important to me that the facility operates debt free. And we've been able to achieve that, and it does. As far as how much and how to finance a business, that it's a really tricky play, but at the same time, it's very simple in that you have to have some ability to grow revenue and acquire capital at a rate that exceeds what interest rate you're paying for the capital that you're taking on up front. In my experience in fitness businesses, you've got to be very, very careful with that because revenues fluctuate so drastically in most facilities. Now, ours doesn't. It's a very stable, revenue rate. It's a very stable rate of return for the business in terms of how we go about conducting our business. But that's not normal for most fitness businesses. And anytime you've got a tremendous amount of volatility, you've got to structure yourself financially so that your base burn rate is pretty manageable, even in a worst case scenario.
So that's absolutely incredible. And that kind of leads into the next question because you mentioned that after getting started, you had the line of credit, you were able to grow things and take care of that line of credit pretty quickly. In the first year of you being open as an independent business owner with a small team, what kind of things did you do to help scale and grow the business that were most lucrative for you guys?
Well, the first thing was, it's interesting because we did. If you look at the first year that Inertia Fitness was in its, I think this facility is 4,500 square feet. If you looked at the revenue that we did in that in the first year, it's very interesting because we did the same amount of business in the first year in 4,500 feet that we did in 1,600 feet in our previous facility. But that amount of business if you've got four trainers stepping over each other, I mean, my office was some of that 1,600 square feet. So our gym space was maybe 1,400 feet. And these guys were stepping on top of themselves. But people wanted the product enough that they were willing to put up with, that degree of chaos. And to be honest with you, I always kind of enjoyed that. I tend to be a guy that likes, I like to stir the sediment. I like things to be agitated and active and bustling. I think quiet restaurants are annoying. I like a little bit of atmosphere. But the growth happened just because people were like, oh, shit, I can work out now without being right on top of somebody else. Let me do 3 sessions a week instead of two. Let me go to 4 sessions a week instead of one. So most of that initially, which was kind of what we predicted too. I mean, most of that initial growth rate was just organic growth from people that were already invested in our business, already willing to dedicate time and treasure to it, that were just like, all right, let me do a little bit more here. And the other aspect of it too was that my guys actually got to be able to kind of spread their workload out a little bit. And whereas, you kind of had to be careful who you booked in the evening at the other facility because there were so many people in there at, 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, then now you got kind of carte blanche access to all 7 days of the week and, all 12 hours that you're willing to work. And so things just kind of ballooned up from there. The other thing that we did, which was always very important to me, is that the real benefit in our business to me is that it covers 100% of my expenses. So I'm not really interested in receiving, what people call passive income, which I don't believe exists. I'm not really interested in receiving, something from the facility. So all I care about is that my overhead is 100% covered by what these guys contribute to the whole. So when I set my needs that low, in essence, for the facility, then there was capital available in the business to keep the business healthy, so that we could operate debt free. And that's something that's very important to me today too. Is I'm not looking for the facility to pay me a salary. My practice and my ability to, and I think that's really pretty important. And you stop me if I'm speaking too long, and you get another question, but I think that's really important. I think when you provide a personal service business, I think too many times the owner of the business is looking for a way to be able to take a step back and chill, as opposed to continue to be in the weeds every day, treating clients. And, I am a physical therapist. That's all I want to be. I've got some pretty good business acumen as well, but I'm not looking to have a facility that provides me, a level of income and comfort that is commensurate with what I can generate on my own seeing clients. I can charge pretty much whatever I want to charge. My book of business is always full. That's how I make my living. And then everything else that the facility generates just takes care of the facility and make sure that it's 100% of what it needs to be, for the guys that are working with me. So that's probably the most direct answer to your question of, man, how did you guys, pay off your debt and operate debt free so quickly? It has to do with the fact that my needs from the facility are pretty limited, and they're going to continue to stay that way.
I love it. I mean, honestly, I share a lot of the same philosophy with you with our business. And there's a couple of things you've said, but for me, like all I've wanted is for the team to cover the expenses of the business and I can take care of myself. And if everyone in here is helping to just cover our fixed costs and expenses, that's great because it's a win for me, win for them. But as such, since my needs are low, I get to pay the guys here a bit more. And like you, we're up 7 years. I've got two guys who started with me and they've been with me since day one. And they're both full time. They're both here right now.
Yeah.
They're both happy. They love it. And it's great because I make enough to have my living. They have enough for their living. The alternative to where the business is giving you the salary, as you know, is that you're paying your staff so much lower. The churn rate for employees or contractors is so much
Yep.
higher because they're unhappy. They're not making enough. They think it's fun and then it's not fun and then they're gone. And then you're in this endless cycle of like, I need new people. I need new people. And then the quality of the product just consistently drops down.
It's degraded over time. You know, the one thing that's very difficult about a personal service business is they're really tricky to scale. You know, I don't know how much time you spend listening to some of these jokers that are blowing up the internet. You know, talk about, oh, you get a 10x your business if you do this, that, and the other thing. You know, you're doing $1 billion of revenue. You know, in 72 hours. I mean, you know that I get really frustrated as an entrepreneur and as a business owner when there's just so much bullshit out there. You know, just muddying the waters. You know, for people you can be very, very successful as a fitness practitioner or a physical therapist if you just look at things with a keen eye and try and create a win-win for everybody that's involved. You know, I have consulted for and taught classes in some really big, splashy, pretentious facilities, and the whole staff is miserable because they're there for a couple 2 3 years. They build a client base, they put the time and effort into it, and then they don't reap the reward. And just like you said, then they're gone. I mean, and that's not the way you win, in my opinion. In our business, it's about hitting singles and doubles. There are some businesses out there. My wife was in the energy business for a long time. There's the opportunity out there in the world to create home runs, very quickly. And this is just not that, unless you're, I don't know, unless you're Billy Blanks and, you're the guy that creates Tybo. And I would compare net worths with Billy Blanks any day, because Tybo had its day in the sun. And, now I don't really see anything about it anymore. Nothing negative about Billy Blanks. I think he's a great guy. But at the end of the day, this is a business about hitting singles consistently over big, long periods of time. And, being financially responsible with how you live your life. And I make more money off of my investments today than I do off of Inertia Fitness, but that's the way it's supposed to be. I mean, I take what I need out, I live my life a particular way, and you can become quite wealthy, just doing that without looking for your facility to be paying you, a gajillion dollars a year on the backs of the guys that are working for you. I've never seen that as being a particularly sustainable model. Not that we're perfect, because we're not, but at the end of the day, the longevity and the time that people have spent working, together here in my facility is kind of speaks for itself.
Just going on the record that you just said we're not perfect, and I know that you believe that you are in some cases, so I'm really sorry you just said that publicly.
Well, I always feel like it's a necessary qualifier. I mean, you know me well enough to by now to know that there's not just a tremendous amount of self doubt that creeps into my life on a daily basis, but nobody's perfect. I mean, we're still trying to get better every day, and I do believe that I am fairly infallible, but that doesn't mean that as an organization that we're not infallible. So
that's not what you said on the phone to me last week.
I was speaking more physically, I mean, than intellectually or professionally.
Well, anyone who's listening to this, if you want Kevin to take his shirt off publicly, please comment, and we'll see if we can make that happen.
Yeah, I'm not worried. There's nobody listening. It's just you and me, just talking shop.
So on that note, if you have people listening, you're good. But I got a couple things here. You mentioned the team thing a couple times, and it's actually a great question I wanted to bring up. Is that you came over, you opened your place, you had a small team with you, you've had a long team for a period of time. I think one of the most interesting things about what you've done and several entrepreneurs is you open a space, and it's not just Kevin, the service provider in your business, right? As soon as you open that, you have a new business of now where you have like team management, and you're regarded like as that team starts to get bigger, you have to worry about how you're going to manage and take care of that team. And I'm just kind of wondering, and you also have the role of an educator. How have you juggled the roles of, Kevin service provider, Kevin team manager, team facilitator, team curator, and also educator all at the same time?
Well, simply put, sometimes really well and sometimes quite poorly. I mean, the probably the one of the hardest things for me is figuring out how much of my time and energy to spread around across all of those things. I mean, that's something that I struggle with, week by week, month by month, year by year. One thing I do think is unique to this last couple of years is that as we try to navigate operating a facility through COVID, one of the things that got squashed from that is the time that we all spent in a room together, doing education work and, kind of working on our brand, so to speak. And that's something that now that things are pretty calm here in Oklahoma, that we intend to kind of get back to doing. In fact, we've got our first all staff meeting in just over 2 years scheduled for September 30th. So, if you're in Oklahoma City and you want to come hang out and go through our staff meeting, you're welcome to. You can bring the beer. But in any capacity, that's one thing that you just hear in the recent history just hasn't been going very well. In the past, I try and let my guys tell me, for better or for worse, how much educational content they think they need from me. How much I'm essentially here in that capacity to help them, right? And I'm perfectly happy to dedicate time to it. But that's probably one of the great struggles in the fact that because I'm still working in the business, I don't have as much time to work on the business and doing educational work with these guys, fits into that working on the business category. But that's something that we're anxious to change, and we're going to start trying to work towards on September 30th. One of the great things about these guys that work with me, though, is they're always willing. They would come to an hour meeting every other day if that's what I said that we were going to do. But the trick for me is first of all, do I really have that much content to take time away from their ability to generate their living? And so I try and be responsible with that and how much I require of them. But then at the same time, I let them tell me how much they feel like they need. We tend to communicate really well together. Again, that's been a little difficult over the last 2 years just because, when you make your living providing service to your clients and you have to be physically present and you got a booger running around out there that can take you out for, 5, 6, 7 days, you got to be careful with that. So we just kind of made the decision that we, we weren't going to clump up together in a space of limited ventilation and talk shop. We needed to stay away from each other to make sure we weren't getting each other sick. And January, February of this year, just as a side note, were our two slowest months ever, just because we had so many people that were sick. I mean, through all the interestingness that was 2020, our business, stayed flat. We grew in 2021, but the first quarter of 2022, we took a hit just because nobody was participating in workout sessions because they were homesick, and we had a bunch of staff that were all sick at the same time. I mean, anyway. So we have done that really well at times. We've done it, quite poorly over the last 2 years in terms of trying to provide education and do that. But I try and let my guys tell me how much they think they need from me, and then my job, whenever we do set a time, is to be consistent as hell. There's nothing more frustrating than saying, hey, we're going to meet, every week on a Monday for an hour and go through exercise mechanics and break down machines, and then 50% of the time, I've got some other thing that I'm putting ahead of that. So if we do set time to be together, I think the most important thing is that for me that time becomes sacred. Doesn't necessarily have to be for everybody else, although oftentimes it is, but that time for me becomes sacred. So, in summary, I think that you have to do that. You got to have something to provide, from an educational standpoint, but you got to let your guys kind of tell you how much they need and how much is valuable to step away from their ability to make revenue. And then it's got to become freaking sacred. It can't be this wishy-washy deal where you're setting a time and then you or I as the business leader is telling people that it's not important because our attendance is sketchy.
I couldn't agree more. We actually just did our first in-person study group for the staff on Wednesday this week for the first time in 2 years. And it was something that was such a sacred time for us. We've been doing online study groups for our small community and Fitness Pro mentors consistently because it's all online. It's just one of us in front. But that team building event of being in person, having a small group, COVID scared us to get together. But it was so nice. Like one of my guys said, "Hey, listen, can we talk about the implications of osteophytes with spinal mechanics?" I'm like, "Let's do a study group. Why not?" And had everybody come in, and it felt so good to get everybody together and have that camaraderie. But that thing you just said, like, I don't mean to reiterate it, but you have to make that time sacred as the owner. Because if you're like, "Hey, 10 o'clock Wednesday, we're going to meet," and then at 9:55, you're like, "You know what? We're going to cancel it this week. We'll pick it up next week." Those small events set a precedence for just how seriously you really take it, and it weans on the team. I think it's just incredible that you're doing that. It's such a powerful thing to show up.
Yeah, who thought? I'm not going to give Charlie McMillan any credit, but years and years ago, Charlie and I were talking, and we were having a conversation similar to this, and he's like, "Kevin, I'm still amazed. Some aged, sacred elder trainer told him when he was first starting out training clients that, Charlie, all you really need to do to be successful at this is just show up all the time, no matter what. Just show up." And I have that conversation with my guys. If somebody's getting off into the ditch a little bit, and clients are getting frustrated, it's like, look, dude, you gotta remember principle number one. You have to be here. You know what I mean? And it's really kind of an interesting guiding principle for me as a facility owner. I have to be here working. You know what I mean? I've got to be present when we're having education meetings, and these knuckleheads have got to show up for every single session that they have booked. It's just amazing how all of the plight that comes to at least these guys here in this situation usually comes from the fact that they're breaking the sacred vow, right? They're not showing up. So I don't want to give Charlie any credit, but I kind of got that phrase from him.
Well, we can definitely give Charlie. I'll give Charlie a little bit of credit for you, but on a serious note, before we get too far into this, Eric Holtzman says, "Do it, take your shirt off." So if we get a few more of those, we're going to have to seriously talk about this.
I think my wife is listening to this, so I've got to behave myself today.
We're majority. We'll talk about that. We can figure out where we can take your shirt off somewhere else. So getting into this a little bit more, you've been doing this now for, you said it was 13 years, like doing your solo entrepreneuring.
Oh gosh, man, I've been doing this personally since 1999.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
We've been doing Inertia Fitness for 6 years, and then the same guys worked for me and at Kevin Dunn MPT LLC for 7 years before that. So 13 years together as a group, and then I've been working as a trainer. I graduated from PT school in 2003. So, I mean, look at this stuff, man. Like this is wisdom right here.
I thought you just super glued that on so that way you hit a higher demographic in the southern states there.
I wish.
So you'd been doing this for so long, 13 years as a team doing the Kevin Dunn MPT thing. What would you say your biggest, if they're getting a little entrepreneurial woo-woo-ish here, what would be the biggest surprise of getting into the entrepreneur side of things that you experienced?
You mean besides ad valorem taxes?
I don't know what that is. Is that a form of taxes?
Yeah, in Oklahoma, in the U.S. and in Oklahoma, we have that. I think it's titled different stuff, but you pay business property tax. So you pay taxes on the property that your business owns, and they're called ad valorem taxes.
You have to pay that if you're leasing too?
There's one little pearl of wisdom for people that are operating a business. Yeah, because you pay taxes on the equipment that you own outright, right?
Ew.
So my facility, we've got, round number, we've got probably $160,000 worth of equipment all told. And so that depreciates over time, but you get a bill for paying taxes on that property that you own. And that, as far as having a facility, that's the only time I've been surprised. I'm a planning, I may not seem like it. There's times where I really like personally to fly by the seat of my pants, but when it comes to finance and business, I research and I have good people around me helping me. And for some reason that one slipped through the cracks, and we got a multiple $1,000 bill, just pow, right at the end of the first year that we were in operation. So, yeah.
So just to clarify, if you've got $150,000 in machines, you have to pay insurance on that, and you have to pay taxes for the space it takes up? If anyone's listening to this, move to Canada, because you don't have to do that. That's crazy.
Oh shit, man! A protein bar costs like $14 in Canada. I mean, they're gonna get it from you one way or the other.
That's just the taxes we pay the government. And that's a whole other conversation. Let's not do that. Very cool. So I got like a couple more big questions here for you. I would say, I mean, I think I kind of asked this to you already, but if you're in a position or one of your contractors or employees are in a position that you need to get more clients, I mean, how would you say is you and your team's like go-to way to acquire new business?
Well, yeah, that's an interesting question because to be honest with you, we've tried a variety of different things, and nothing really works. Nothing has worked for us consistently other than word of mouth referral. And our situation is unique in that, and this is going to make me sound arrogant, and I don't want it to be. I mean, I am playfully pretty cocky, but at the end of the day, um, I don't like to toot my own horn that much unless it's for entertainment value. But my practice has a big enough demand to it that it overflows very nicely across the people that we have. Now, one of our limitations in growing beyond, 5 or 6 trainers is that there's a limit to how much the overflow from my particular practice can fill seats on these guys' books of business. But it's almost like once you hit a particular threshold where you've got 5 trainers that have full books of business, those people become your marketing base. And I have yet to find something that has been worth the return on investment, to provide, number one, the kind of clients that we're looking for. People that have realistic, either fitness or health related goals that are looking for a long term relationship. I mean, that really kind of is our demographic is we want to provide service at all levels, both having membership in the facility, being able to do physical therapy if you're nicked, bumped, or scraped, and then being able to have somebody guide you through your workout or use the facility and get the exercise you need kind of through us. That's our demographic. And I've yet to find something for us that has been worth the return on investment other than just the organic volume that the inertia of our facility, creates. But in any way, that is, Brandon, that's one thing that I would cite as a weakness is the ability to try and exploit digital marketing or multiple media marketing of any kind and try and generate some sort of consistent flow from that. And I'm 100% open to the idea that we just haven't been doing it right and that there's limitations to that. You may have all kinds of great pearls of wisdom for me in terms of doing that, but we've been able to survive and to thrive, on the fact that I seem to have, for whatever reason, a really good reputation, and then my guys' reputation, generates, leads. And I hate marketing terminology for human beings in their lives too, but generates meaningful relationships for the folks that come and seek us out.
I love it. Well, I mean, personal note, if you ever want to chat about stuff outside of referral stuff, I got some ideas. I would be happy to help you at any time, as long as you took your shirt off while we were talking. But leading into the next part.
I'll be happy to do that, Brandon, but you're going to have to, this is all going to have to kind of fill in, around here. Like you're going to have to be able to grow an actual full adult male beard for me to really take you seriously.
Well, the good news is the back of my hair is slowly disappearing and it's starting to fall down more. So as it falls down, it starts to come up. So I bet you by the end of the year, we'll be up here. It'll be good.
That's cool, man. Mine's falling onto my back. So I'm glad yours is going someplace productive.
So you've got a really interesting model. I mean, as you regarded, I mean, you're a physical therapist by trade, and then your facility is much more like on the outside view or like the satellite view. It looks much more like a gym than it does a physical therapy clinic. And I know in Canada, several folks who have tried to do, I know of a couple of businesses, both commercially and privately, that have tried to create the physical therapy to fitness model. And I really haven't seen it work outside of literally one very expensive private medical place in Toronto. With you and your business, I mean, you are held in such high regard for your niche in your area. Is your business like, are you kind of the top of the funnel where most people come in and they've got like a problem requiring to be fixed from the physical therapy end, and then the conversation trickles on to now we got to strengthen this thing? Or are there other ways that people come about finding you?
Basically, I would say that 75, well, and it changes. I mean, I'm going to make up, my favorite thing to do is make up percentages, right, with no actual factual basis underpinning them. I would say that the which I've already told you, we did some actual hardcore numerical analysis, and I was dead ass wrong, right? So
Right.
you take take what I tell you with a grain of salt.
Fair enough.
But the vast majority of people come into the business looking for needing, physical therapy, but the way I approach things has an identity to the point where they're not looking necessarily just to lay on my table and have me fix them. Usually it's a man, I've got to exercise and I've got a knee that a doctor told me needed to be replaced. Are you the guy that can help me figure out how to navigate this exercise thing in spite of my arthritic knee? And so that's the vast majority of people that seek us out. Usually are people that know that we're primarily an exercise facility, but that I do some special voodoo stuff on my treatment table that can help expedite the process. And so, yeah, so most people tend to flow through me and then out into the facility. But it's not like, I think one of the big problems with the physical therapy to fitness model is the idea that you have to finish physical therapy, and then once you're healed and well, then you're deposited in the realm of fitness. And we start that process on day one. And that tends to be kind of the difference between the way that I approach that is that my guys are so adept at making modifications to exercise and then instructing them well based on what I think somebody can get away with or is going to be good for them with respect to their diagnosis. Take somebody that's got advanced knee osteoarthritis. There's all kinds of great stuff from trying to improve tibial rotation to making sure foot and ankle mechanics are good and strengthening things around the hip that I do in practice all the time. But yet at the same time, moving that joint is essential for their recovery and for pain management and everything else. So we like to start the process of exercise really, really early. And all of the conversations from a patient education standpoint that I value, like teaching somebody that their knee is a hinge and having them learn that where their foot is facing is an indicator of how the hinge is operating, and starting them on a leg press like our Nautilus Nitro leg press that does some things to manipulate load, but then at the same time, we can set the range limits so they're not even getting close to 100 degrees of knee flexion where the surface area of the knee is most vulnerable. My guys are really adept at doing that. So if I give them somebody and say, hey, we need to kind of set this safe parameters leg press wise, I look out my window where all the good stuff is, like the leg press and the trunk rotation machine, all the things that can wreak havoc on people. I'm so neurotic that they're right out my office window, right? So when I look out there, they've got the range limit set. People are working on controlling 90 degrees of knee flexion from full extension to knee to flexion. The weight's reasonable. They're on the right piece of equipment. So I think that stuff is just hugely important. The fact that here I am, telling somebody about what osteoarthritis is and what we can do to work within that, around that, or make the situation better. But then I can plop them very quickly on a trainer's schedule, kind of coach that person as to what they should do, and then the patient education part of it and the affirmation and the positive stuff that comes from exercise are starting very, very early, as opposed to me having to work with the person for, I mean, hell, Brandon, I've got people that have been on my schedule for years. They would never consider themselves rehabilitated and ready for exercise, right? So chronic pathology, that's the nature of it. And I've got a lot of people in my practice that would benefit from a knee replacement, but they just stick their foot in the ground and say, I'm not doing it." I mean, so anyway, I don't know if that makes any sense, but that tends to be how we approach that, and that can be negotiated across multiple diagnoses. Every guy out there in my gym knows how to very smartly educate and start the progression of resisted external rotation, which I'm going to do for everybody that comes in with a shoulder problem anyway. They're going to start working on strengthening and external shoulder rotation. So there's these little gems. Not to say that we're protocol oriented by any stretch of the imagination, but there's these little gems that provide this tremendous entryway into getting people to start exercising, even with some of the most heinous pathology.
I'm just wondering what those machines that you're a bit more neurotic about right outside your window. Have you ever like thrown a dry erase marker or shouted at someone offensively to stop them from doing something?
Well, if it doesn't happen at least daily, people start to worry that there's something wrong with me.
I just pictured you. Hey, stop that! That would be awesome.
But that I tend to the way that I do that, for better or for worse, is I tend to do that with very quick cutting smart ass comments that are meant to entertain the client at the expense of the trainer.
Mm.
And so, if there's something that I see, and very rarely, I mean, these guys are all professionals. They don't need me, supervising them. So I'm pretty much like the helicopter parent where the kid knows that he's about to fall off the skateboard, and I'm the asshole that's going, hey, you need to be careful. You're about to fall off that skateboard. So anyway.
I just picture you working in your facility and say, "Hey, boy beard, stop that."
Boy beard. Hey, come on, man. You've taken classes that I've taught. My game is better than boy beard. I
You
mean,
do
come
got
on.
better stuff. You got better stuff, but we got to save that for live. So you kind of got into a little bit like just you talked about your thought process a little bit, which with anybody who, I mean, I'm still super biased that you should get back to teaching a bunch more because I still think you're one of the best instructors, both academically and personally, that I've ever had. But I'm wondering within your own facility, you have kind of like your own, a lot of academic education, and then also some values you've developed over the last few years, several years from just being in practice. How do you maintain a consistent, highly academic environment for you and all your trainers, and also have your trainers openly and be excited about participating in that environment?
I think that gets back to the you got to show up. I mean, the there is there's a healthy competition in that I charge more per hour, I see more clients, I have more autonomy. There are things about my day to day practice that are, again, at risk of sounding like a turd, that are worthy of aspiring to in some way, right? I mean, I do well doing what I do. I've got people that really respect my opinion, and these guys, they all want to be better, and everybody's kind of at a varying rate of that, right? Like, one of my guys splits time between working here and being a fireman, and you know, and that's a fantastic split for him. He still has a full book of business as a trainer, but things have become kind of transient. He's a paramedic, EMT, and he's a fireman, and for personal reasons, he decided that he wanted kind of something else to balance in the time away from training, and he found it. So, is he still at a place where he's just grinding to be a good trainer? No, he's there. He's already a good trainer, and he's perfectly comfortable kind of being there. I hate speaking for him, but I'll take my turn at it. So he wants, in terms of professional development, a little bit less of the secret sauce than the guy that's got the least number of clients on his schedule. Some of the younger guys are really hungry for, man, how do I build my book of business? How do I get it so full that I can start calling the shots more, as opposed to just being somebody that's getting pulled around by where the work is throughout the course of my day. And so that's basically it, is that I'm here working every day, I'm achieving great results for my clients, I'm generating things that people tend to value, like a great reputation and notoriety and all that sort of stuff, and that tends to drive people's interest. For some reason, when I go out into the gym and I start explaining stuff, people listen, and that's what got me into education. Was I was fascinated by the ability to communicate things to people. And at the end of the day, I am not very intelligent, but I communicate at a really high level, apparently. So there's not that much nuanced, or not nuanced, but there's not that much unique about how I look at physical therapy or exercise, I don't think. I mean, maybe there is, but the thing that I tend to do well is communicate it in a way that's simple and concise and digestible. And so I can go out into the gym right now and start talking about the leg extension machine. And I mean, even clients are going to just kind of stop and start listening, just because there seems to be something appealing about the way that I explain things.
I love it. Yes. And I do think you have something special to offer because that's why everyone keeps listening. You're a great communicator, but you got some stuff to offer.
Well, thank you.
I got one last question for you because I want to respect and honor your time, and I know you got to get back to some stuff.
Well, my 3 o'clock client is coming in here at 3 o'clock, whether you and I are still talking or not. So
that's fine. They can join us and they can tell us.
He'll probably just come charging in here, and he'll just climb right up on my treatment table. So if there's if there's an 80-year-old dude in here, like looking at the camera, like wagging his finger at it, you'll know why.
I'll interview him as well because I'd love to get some real unbiased information about you.
Oh man, this guy, you'd have to pay me to get this guy to do an interview, because your podcast would triple in viewership just from listening to Larry talk about me.
Ooh, I would love that. I would love that. So here's I would say, like, because you are an incredible communicator, you do have business acumen. And I also know, I mean, you're an incredible educator when it comes to exercise. I'm wondering, you've probably had trainers ask you this in the past. And if they haven't, I'd be interested in your answer. If a new trainer, I shouldn't say new, an established trainer, someone that had a full book of clients said, hey, Kevin, I want to open my own place. Is there like one overarching piece of advice that you'd give someone who's interested in opening their own brick and mortar space?
The first question, and yeah, I've answered this question many, many times. The first question that I always ask is why, and what's the underpinning rationale? Because if the underpinning rationale is good, then I think that everybody should try and follow their passion and do what they want to do. And those the if you want to open your own facility for wealth and power, that would be why don't you go ahead and just stay where you are, right? If you want to open your own facility because there's limitations where you are to deliver what your ideal service provision is, then I think that's fantastic. And I think that there are so many, and I'm sure you've seen this too. I mean, I've watched literally probably 1,000 exercise businesses come and go. I've watched multi-million-dollar facilities. There's a facility that I did a lot of work for that at one time was generating over $3 million annually just in personal training revenue alone, and they're gone. And so the idea that you have to be doing things for the right reasons, and if you're following, a vision for what the perfect service delivery is in this business, I think you got to get after that. But then you also have to look at the cost of that and see, can I really afford to do this the way that I want to do it? Because I've seen multi-million-dollar facilities fail, you know, um, and that's what I think. I think you got to get to the hardcore why of what you're doing, and then you've got to find strategic partnerships. Doing it alone, I do fairly well at what I do, and I can kind of write my own ticket, but I could not do what I do alone. We wouldn't have this facility. I'd still be working out of a 1,400 square foot space if it were just me. So, the first thing is why do you want to do it? And the second thing is who are you going to do it with? Who are going to be, your partners? Who are you going to get to invest in what you're doing? Not in terms of monetarily, although that's important. Partnerships come in all forms and shapes, but you have to have people that are going to help you go along the way. And then you got to ask that eternal question of how the hell are we going to do this, and what does that look like? And you got to check pricing, and you got to look, and you got to go, and you got to talk to commercial real estate brokers and figure out what the hook is for them. Like, what are they trying to get out of this transaction? What are you trying to get out of it? What does the landlord want? What do you need? You got to go through those exercises, because so many times I think that's where the failures are. People are doing it for the wrong reasons. They're partnering with the wrong people, and then they're attempting to achieve their goal in just the wrong way, right?
I couldn't agree more. Well, dude, thanks so much for your time today. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll get on a call with you and poke fun of your sketchy beard anytime you want me to.
Honestly, I was thinking today, and I'll say this out publicly just in front, but I would love to do, I don't even know what to talk about. We could see, but I'd love to talk to you and Charlie at the same time and just see what kind of nonsense comes out. Because you guys always poke at each other. Well, he says nice things about you, and then you say mean things about him. So I think that would be a really interesting interaction in person.
Yeah, well, the sensitivity of the Canadian is coming through there, because I don't think I said anything mean about Charlie. I just said I didn't want to give him credit for anything. I mean, I didn't make fun of the fact that the guy never leaves his basement. I didn't talk about his hair or his Hobart sweatshirts. I mean, that's all. I mean, I didn't say anything about that stuff. All I said was I'm reluctant to give him credit.
Awesome. Well, Kevin, thank you so much. And listen, anyone who's checking this out, Kevin Dunn, inertiaokc.com, definitely check him out. Kevin, man, have a wonderful day and enjoy your incredible 80-year-old who's going to talk smack about you.
Shh, he's right outside. Don't allude to the fact that I just outed him.
No worries,
Brandon, be
man.
good, man. Be well.
Yeah.
Hope you and your family, have a great weekend.
Thanks, Kevin. You too. Take care.
See you, brother.